let me begin now. I'm also recording this on my mobile phone as usual to share it on YouTube. Okay. Now, last week I stopped at the beginning of cultural materialism. The British critic Graham Holderness describes cultural materialism as a politicized form of historiography. So, in neo-historicism, we said that all literary texts are considered as secondary historical sources. Graham Holderness, in cultural materialism, he suggests that all texts are also at the same time political, and cultural materialism is a political form of historiography. So everything is not only historical, but they are also political from the perspective of Graham Holderness. We can explain this as meaning the study of historical material within a politicized framework. So in neo-historicism, we considered everything, all the literary texts, as a result of history, and all the literary texts as bearing some historical background in the deep meaning of the text, in the covered meaning of the text. Cultural materialism, on the other hand, considers this fact as the definitely political side of everything. So culture is a political reflection of the society. The term cultural materialism was made current in 1985 when it was used by Jonathan Dollimore and Alan Sinfield as the subtitle of their edited collection of essays, Political Shakespeare. So they read Shakespeare politically, not only historically, but politically at the same time. They defined the term in a foreword as designating a critical method which has 4 characteristics. So what are these 4 characteristics? Historical context, theoretical context, political commitment, and textual analysis. So we have 4 major characteristics of cultural materialism. Historical context, yes, we accept that. We agreed in the idea that all texts are historical in the beginning. So, historical context. Theoretical method. So, cultural materialism is applied with a theory only. And political commitment. So, we do not only look at the history, we do not only look at the theory, but we have to be politically committed to do that. And textual analysis. How do we analyze the text? Historically and politically first, and then culturally. To comment briefly on each of these, firstly, the emphasis on historical context, which undermines the transcendent significance traditionally accorded to the literary text. Here, the word transcendent roughly means timeless. So the cultural materials in the texts have timeless value. They have timeless value, and this timeless value means whatever mentioned by Shakespeare 500 years ago are still valid because they are timeless, and we can still talk about them even as if they are said today, as if they are mentioned today. The position taken, of course, needs to face the obvious objection that if we are today still studying and reading Shakespeare, then his plays have indeed proved themselves timeless, in the simple sense that they are clearly not limited by the historical circumstances in which they were produced. But this is a matter of degree. The aim of this aspect of cultural materialism is to allow the literary text to recover its histories, which previous kinds of study have often ignored. So we have to find out the history with a political purpose, with a political commitment in mind. Secondly, the emphasis on theoretical method. What does it signify? It signifies the break with liberal humanism, an absorbing of the lessons of structuralism, post-structuralism, and other approaches which have become prominent since the 1970s. So liberal humanism supported new criticism, which was empty, in my opinion. You do only close reading of a text and close analysis of a text by applying close reading, detailed reading of the text with no commitment, with no connection with the outside reality. But post-structuralism is not like that. Structuralism and post-structuralism is not like that. So here again, as I have been saying since the beginning, we are back to post-structuralism. We can't do anything without post-structuralism. We can't do anything without deconstruction. Thirdly, the emphasis on political commitment. What does that mean? It signifies the influence of Marxist and feminist perspectives and the break from the conservative Christian framework which hitherto dominated Shakespeare criticism. Now, most Shakespearean criticism, traditional Shakespearean criticism, of course, was based on that white Christian English approach, and it was, analyzed from that particular perspective. But cultural materialists said that we must forget all about those. This is a very Eurocentric and Anglocentric approach. Instead, we have to apply more theoretical approach like, Marxist theory or feminist theory. What is there? Is there any Marxism in Shakespeare? Oh, yes. Look at Macbeth. Look at King Lear. And is there any feminism in Shakespeare? Yes. Look at Taming of the Shrew and Comedy of Errors. Then, finally, the stress on textual analysis locates the critique of traditional approaches where it cannot be ignored. Textual analysis. In other words, there's a commitment not just to making theory of an abstract kind, but to practicizing it on mainly the text. So textual analysis, yes, we analyze the text theoretically, we analyze the text politically and historically. So without the text, we cannot do such kind of analysis at all. The two words in the term cultural materialism are further defined. Culture includes all forms of culture. Forms like television, popular music, and fiction. Traditionally, culture used to mean high culture only. Art, literature, classical music, opera, and that sort of thing. But however, cultural studies is eclectic. Cultural studies covered all forms of cultures, even popular music, even hip-hop culture, even heavy metal culture, film culture, fashion. And that is, this approach does not limit itself to high cultural forms like the Shakespeare play. Materialism, on the other hand, we said cultural materialism. Materialism, on the other hand, signifies the opposite of idealism. Okay, philosophically, we use idealism in a good sense, in a positive sense, a very idealist person. And also, we use materialism in a negative sense here. A materialist person in practical daily use, a materialist person is a person who gives value to money, but an idealist person is a person who doesn't give any value to money, but he gives value to his ideas only. But philosophically, idealism is an abstract notion. Okay, you believe in an unseen world, you believe in unseen ideas. On the other hand, materialism is concrete, secular. So, materialism signifies the opposite of idealism. An idealist belief would be that high culture represents the free an independent play of the talented individual mind. The contrary materialist belief is that culture cannot transcend the material forces and relations of production. Culture cannot transcend the material forces and relations of production. Culture is not simply a reflection of the economic and political system. Okay, it's not simply a reflection. Remember Althusser's over-determinism? He said that there isn't a direct relationship between, there isn't a definite relationship between base and superstructure, base and culture. That is over-determinism. He said that there are so many other factors that designs culture and design the superstructure. Culture is not simply a reflection of economic and social status, but nor can it be independent of it. Yes, culture is not independent from the economic and political systems. However, it is not directly based on that. These comments on materialism represent the standard beliefs of Marxist criticism, and they do perhaps point to the difficulty of making a useful distinction between a straight Marxist criticism and cultural materialism. Yes, cultural materialism is a Marxist theory, but straight Marxist criticism believes that there's definitely a relationship between the economic base and the culture. That's it. Cultural materialism says no, there isn't a direct relationship between them, although yes, it is influential on the creation of culture, but there isn't a direct powerful relationship between them. Why? It is added that the relevant history is not just that of 400 years ago, but that of the times in which Shakespeare is produced and reproduced. So we inherit certain cultural values for hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years. For instance, whether you are a believer or not, whether you are a faithful Muslim or Christian or not, you are shaped, your mind is shaped by the local, traditional, and religious culture you are brought up. All right? Whether you are a believer or not, you have a mindset given to you by the society. Thus, in cultural materialism, there is an emphasis on the function of institutions through which Shakespeare is now brought to us. So, even though we sometimes claim that my economic relations shape my culture, so I come from a bureaucratic society, all right, and my relations of production is bureaucratic relations. Therefore, I am more secular, more metropolitan, so my music taste is different. I do not listen to, semi-urban folk music, semi-urban arabesque music and things like that. I can claim that. But don't worry, all of us go and dance in a wedding, for example, in traditional folk song. Or if we go away from the country, if we hear some türkü somewhere, then we get emotional. So this is not totally based on, culture is not totally based on economic relationships and your cultural background, but your local and traditional culture. So cultural materialism, therefore, takes a good deal of its outlook from the British left-wing critic Raymond Williams. Instead of Foucault's notion of discourse, Williams invented the term structures of feeling. These are concerned with meanings and values as they are lived and felt. Structures of feeling are often antagonistic both to explicit systems of values and beliefs and to the dominant ideologies within a society. Then, they are characteristically found in literature and they oppose the status quo. The result is that cultural materialism is much more optimistic about the possibility of oppositional values. Cultural materialism particularly involves using the past to read the present. So this is the important difference between New Historicism and cultural materialism. New Historicism tells us that there is definitely history behind everything. Even a simple love story may be historical. It shows the historical conditions of the time. But cultural materialism still believes that they show us the historical conditions of the time, but cultural materialists also say that those historical conditions illuminate our day. Okay, we can read our day, we can understand our day by looking at those. I was trying to do that in 18th century novel, if you remember, when we were reading Robinson Crusoe, when we were reading Gulliver's Travels. By looking at those historical conditions, we were commenting on our day, if you remember. So, cultural materialism involves using the past to read the present, revealing the politics of our own society by what we choose to emphasize or suppress of the past. A great deal of the British work has been about undermining what it sees as the fetishistic role of Shakespeare as a conservative icon within British culture. So Shakespeare has turned into the Britishness, Englishness of the society. On the other hand, we can say that it's not always like that, because he produced something universal, he produced something timeless, which are still relevant on our day. Okay, so let me close this session now, and I will open the second session in 5 minutes. Okay, see you in 5 minutes.